Clap. I already clapped. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. My name's Phil Bossman and I'm happy to have you join us. I am joined by my tonight's co-host, Mr. Stephen Judd, Mr. Awkward Judd. Look him
Yes.
up. You know where you find him.
Yes, I'm happy to be on the mic, and Mike is happy that I'm not. So, standing in for Mike Kanakos this evening, and good to see you, Phil. How's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm doing
Y-
well. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
man.
super excited about the year to come. We closed off 2025 and getting 2026 going. I think we're doing a really good job getting that
Yeah,
together.
yeah. I'm excited to see the enthusiasm. We were yakking a little bit about the PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit coming up, and if you don't have a ticket, please get one and come see us. Love to see you there. Love to meet you in person. And I don't know what intros we need for our super awesome speaker this evening. So Phil, do you have anything ready, or should we just riff it?
I think we just rip it. It's this idea
Okay.
of, if there's a thing that you think you can possibly do in PowerShell, our guest tonight can probably do it. And so that's one of the contents. That's one of the comments that I want to make. It's just that, James is, has been around and can certainly understands the language much better than so many of us. And
Yeah.
we
Well, he
just,
was he
let him
was
go.
there when it was being written. He wasn't the first person on the team, but he
Yeah, I
was on the team at
mean,
Microsoft when it was being written. So he knows the guts very well, and I'm excited to see what he has to talk about. Also,
Yeah.
James is kind of like a PowerShell Ronin. He doesn't really have his current master or lord, and so he's roaming the countryside, bringing PowerShell with him and
Yes.
solving the public's problems. So
Awesome.
if you have need of James's skills, look him up.
thank
Yes.
you. That's a wonderful thing to add, and not necessarily the world's worst way to describe me overall. I do tend to work independently for the benefit of the community and wander the countryside and help out people's PowerShell when I'm a bit bored. Um, but yeah, I've kind of ended up with something extra special pretty recently that I think helps most of us all. And if we're going to kind of just jump right into it, I figured let's start with a bit of story time and then actually kind of show off what the thing is and how it works and kind of go from there.
Cool.
So
You want to
since
share your screen so it goes big on us?
let's do that.
Yep.
I'm just
And
still going to
I'll
start with the
step.
pugs though for a second.
Oh yes, gotta
Just
see the pups. All right.
got to see the puppets. All right. So as Stephen just alluded to, I am Ronan currently in search of a master, and it was just the holiday season, and it's one of those years. So our family basically decided we were basically going to do a mostly crafting Christmas, and I've got two wonderful nieces, and I wanted to give them something related to the turtle graphics stuff that I've been working on the year, because that's basically for this next generation of tech to learn from. So I kind of started out with this sort of, vague idea and this challenge of like, how do I make a really awesome holiday gift for kids that lets them draw a bunch of pretty pictures without understanding all the things to draw the pretty pictures on top of the thing that I already have to draw pretty pictures. Oh, and by the way, how do I make it scalable enough that they can run it and not like overload their computer, and safe enough that they're not going to accidentally like click something and destroy their computer? How do I do this? This does not necessarily seem easy. And then I remembered that there's this wonderful thing, I'm going to come back to it, called the data language in PowerShell. It's the restricted language mode that you use to load manifests. And it can only run the commands you say it can run and nothing else. And so I realized it'd be really easy to build a REPL, a read, evaluate, print loop on top of this technology. So I built a REPL. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the PowerShell window. I actually already have a few of these running. but I can have plenty more. So I'm going to go launch a brand new one. And this is going to be our example turtle reptile, given in roughly this form to my nieces. And the way I kind of introduced it to them, and the way I'm going to introduce it to you, and we're going to see if anybody has a stopwatch. Actually, let me get one ready. We'll see how long this actually takes. So I said to my nieces, I bet you I can draw 100 pretty pictures in a minute. Ready? Go. So we're just clicking away with Turtle Lucky, which is picking a random picture to draw. And almost to 100, and we are at 100. And it has drawn me 100 pretty pictures in 21.65 seconds. Let's look at some of what it drew.
If any of your drawings are a mystery, would you call them Nancy?
That's pretty bad.
I know.
But yeah, so we clearly have endless, basically fractal beauty at the click of a button running in PowerShell in a browser. And we just did it 100 times in 21 seconds. Let's go to some examples. As we just, clicked lucky. Oh yeah, we can obviously have a button that does this too. So just click a bunch more. But yeah, let's go to our examples and let's draw a circle. Add a little bit more of a script there, or a pie, or a square, or a rectangle, or a star. It'll randomly pick a few different points. So let's go ahead and do a few more stars. Flower shape. Another bunch of flowers. Star flowers. Step spirals. So please comment, how cool is this? And like, how nice it is to have PowerShell at the click of the button, just returning right into the browser. Don't leave me hanging, please. Come off mute, talk, engage.
So how did you do this? Like, especially getting the random images.
Okay.
And I
Well,
want to see this spirograph.
I don't have spirograph yet.
It's what it looked like.
It's kind of like spirograph, but it's like spirograph in particular draws roses. And I don't have the thing for roses implemented. That was cut this afternoon because I wanted to get this out before the meeting.
No,
But that's just Murphy's Law in action. The one thing you don't have, that's the one thing they first asked for.
The complicated line draw with recursive shapes.
Sure. I mean, you're just looking at one of them. There's a Sierpinski triangle.
Well, yeah, but not triangles, the circles and arcs. One of the things there I found really interesting. And also the color transitions are nice too.
Thank you. Go on.
So I'm really interested in how you do the set up your listener, the port listener, in addition to the actual coding of the shapes.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wants to shout out something they're interested in? Any thing that we want to add or go into?
Then we start with that, and then it'll give other people ideas.
So you wanted to know how I set up the listener and how this works. We're going to go into the innards of this first, rather than kind of like the client-y stuff. Okay? So I'm going to take you first to the PowerShell console, because that's kind of the easy one we're familiar with. We all know that I can do a lot of dangerous things in the PowerShell console. I can also run stuff in a data block, or try to. So I can do very basic stuff, ABC, and data block here. And I can kind of say ABC times 1, 2, 3. So I can do sort of basic math. For you clue fans, I can figure out 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1. Plus 1 plus 2 plus 1. Anyway.
I would have never thought to try to multiply a string.
Well, that's one of those things you could just do in PowerShell. And it's great. So we can also say something like multiply an array. Like I can say something like forward 42, rotate 40 or 90. Okay. And I can still say this inside of a data block, and I can repeat it 4 times. And what I'm doing in the GUI is that, basically. So I'm copying and pasting this back to our thing. We're going to go hit another turtle here. And got ourselves a square. So let's, embody the spirit of Turtle. And for those who do not know, Turtle is a old way that computers first learned to draw, and kind of the foundations of almost all robotics. It's a fascinating, fun topic, but it's all basically about relative motion. So you imagine your turtle moving around or holding a pen and drawing a line, okay? So our turtle says we go forward 42, we rotate 90. We'll just do this once. We get this line because we haven't drawn a second line yet. We're going to go do this again. Okay, now we got, half of a square. So it's meant to be easy to explore. And one of the things you might notice is that if I'm running this here, I'm getting actually a better output than I can get in the console, because I can't render an SVG in the console. But just by putting it inside of the browser, suddenly I have the ability to make this all easy and working. So I've got a data block. That's the foundational bit. What I can do inside of a data block is I can say I support a given command. Okay, so let's take this data, block it normally. It says, hey, I can't do that. Now, if I do supported command, oh, I didn't finish typing. Then I can do that. So this allows me to have a very limited form of PowerShell, which I can only use whitelisted commands. And I can't do a lot of other things. So if I wanted to say data if true, A, else B, that'll work. If my variable, nope, can't use a variable, properly speaking. We'll get back to this in a second. Okay, so I can't do that. I can't do for each X and Y, or I can't even do, well, I can use true, so we know that, so I can't do while true though, because loops aren't allowed. So you probably have a neutered version of PowerShell. You have a PowerShell that has been, for lack of a better way to put it, defanged in a data block. Does everybody kind of get this foundational bit? And we can go into the how the server works.
Keep going.
Okay, cool. So This is Reptile itself. It is one big function. Don't be daunted by the length because like half of it is documentation, the world's longest note about how this works. And rather than try to read that there, I'm going to go over to the GitHub repository, which is now up, and that should become the README. Yep, there it is. So we got our basics. I can install and import this with, PowerShell Gallery. I can also clone it and import it there, and I can just run a basic server. We had just shown you running the turtle shell. Let's run something much simpler, and let's just run Reptile. So now we got a new server up, and eventually I'll find a browser window that has it. Okay, so I've got a new server, and I'm going to go ahead and try to say get command, and it's going to be like, no, I can't run any commands, but I can do 2 + 2. That is still 4, and I can be a little fun, and I could say all work and no play, make Jack a dull boy. And we're going to use our array multiplication trick, and we're going to do that 1,000 times. And oh, fine. There are some limits, so we're just going to do it literally 1,000 times. Yes.
Yeah, so we're just going to zoom bigger.
There.
Oh, not that big, but yeah. Thank you.
Oh, and it's also, I'm doing this the wrong way. I have to close my array there. And now you won't mind making 1,000 of them, now will you? No, you won't. And now I'll change the sizing because it makes it a little bit more fun. In fact, I'm going to make more, shining references here for a second. And why not make it 10 kilobytes of all work and no play, make Jack a dull boy? Oh, because I still have my bug there? Maybe. Maybe I hit another limit of the reference or language. So we're do 9. Oh,
What's
no,
the
they do have
bug?
another reference. So I do have a hard-coded 1 KB limit. That's as many as I can do. So if I do 1.01 or 1025, and nope. Sorry, you were saying?
So is it a bug or is it just the limit of what you can do is only 1024? Just curiosity's sake.
This is the limit of data language mode. Data language mode is designed for safety and scale.
Gotcha.
So if I wanted to read every manifest of the PowerShell gallery without being potentially pwned, I've got to have a way to read a hash table and basically nothing more. And that's kind of where data language started, or restricted language. So if I go to, I believe I had actually corrected a small mistake here on this. There's a, what is it? About language modes. PowerShell. Yep. Nope. So again, this is working off of restricted language. And if I go look for a data block in here, data section, this might not be the best way to find them. Where is the data block stuff?
It's in chat. It's data sections.
Thank you. So yeah, there are data sections. This has been a PowerShell thing since V2. And considering HTTP listener is roughly as old, theoretically could have written Reptile at any point since V2. Okay.
So kind of behind the scenes, it's like you're just using HTTP listener, but then you're using data block to gate, because that's what you're effectively taking that input from the string or whatever the user decides. And so you don't want to bulk that all up because you're just blindly taking whatever's from there, right?
Yep. They are just passing me a command to run, and if it's one of the supported commands and they're using syntax that is safe, it will run it. And if it's not, yeah, that's that.
All right, keep going. If it's not, then it goes from there.
If it's not, it's going to spit back the error. I did not run. Here is why. I will not run. Here is why. That's what we're seeing. So we've got our very simple data block. And then we've got a HTTP listener. And then we've got about 10 other things that I'm doing to make sure that it's extra safe. So we allow a supported command, and your Reptile is as dangerous as that supported command is. I do explicitly block invoke expression, but you could probably make something that calls invoke expression, and you'd have a very dangerous Reptile. If you had Reptile supported command Python, that would be an incredibly dangerous Reptile. Make sense? So you are as safe as the command you support. That I can't change. I'm not going to ship any commands that are dangerous. You can make your own Reptile for your own box that is as dangerous as you'd like, but it's not something that I have any interest in supporting as a scenario. It is not safe if you have an unsafe command, but if you don't expose an unsafe command, you're fine. And if you're talking about PowerShell, most commands are, if they have simple data, string or int or float or date time or time span parameters, you're fine. They're going to be safe. If they're not elevating to a credential they shouldn't, they're fine. You're going to be safe. If you have a private variable that has this information that they shouldn't see, you're still fine, because in this case, they can only interact with the web server, which doesn't give them the ability to see any variables, just run the command. So as long as your command doesn't output, hey, here's my secret variable, you're fine. However, just on the extra safety level, by default, it will run on a random local loopback port. Does not require elevation, so I'm not going to be running as admin. Does not need to open an external port, so I don't actually have anybody that can talk to this but this machine. And because it's random, it's less predictable. So you wouldn't know, oh yeah, Bob has Reptile running on port 911 unless Bob was an idiot, right? And put a big sticky on his desk and said, I'm running invoke expression on port 911 all the time as admin. Is that part of the security making sense?
Yep, keep going.
Cool. So the other thing we have with PowerShell, it's pretty awesome, that most languages don't have, is an AST. So I'm going to go back to our data block. I'm just going to go back to the simple one here, 1 + 1. Okay. So I have an AST here, and I can go look at the AST and say, hey, you only have a data expression. Sorry, statements 0, get type. You only have one data statement. And because I know data blocks are safe, I know you're safe if all you have is one data statement. If you tell me a command to run and it only has that one data statement, you're good, right? Mostly, at least in theory. So we do some AST inspection. We make sure you only have one thing to run. Doesn't have a single statement, it will not run. If it seems like the supported command list changed, it won't run. It does a little thing here and thing there to make sure that you couldn't muck even though it doesn't seem like it'd be possible to, but it's built with an abundance of caution. And then to add to that abundance of caution and to performance, it runs all these data blocks inside of a background job. So let's go back to our terminal here for a second.
We have a question from Alan again.
Okay, give me a second to show this, and then let's get to the question. So here is our, at least one of our turtle job, reptile jobs. Bloody Copilot stuff. Yeah. So
I'm sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm going to find the one that actually has most of our turtle stuff, which I think is, actually, I'm just going to go receive them all, because why not? So yeah, they're all the commands that we passed and all these background jobs that ran to handle it, and us clicking a crap load of times. Yeah. All right, now question.
I ran, looked locally for the help about language modes. It's the only way you set this in the session config, or can you do it in the script itself? And what prevents people from fiddling with your session config?
What do you mean? What prevents people from fiddling with they?
Well,
if
you were telling
they-
me how safe you were telling me how you defined
All right.
what
So you look.
commands can run, and if I can write to the session config, doesn't that,
If you couldn't launch this, you are already the person in control of how safe it is,
okay.
right? And if you are somebody on some other box, you shouldn't even be able to see it in its default mode.
Right.
And if you are someone else magically lurking on this box, you shouldn't be able to predict what port it's going to be on, what it's running, and thus you shouldn't be able to know in advance that this is exploitable, even
So
if you were doing the invoke expression example.
Are the commands in a session configuration file?
No.
Where do you declare that this
Okay.
is restricted mode?
We'll get back to that. Where I declare it is very immutable because we talked about, wanting to see the listener. Now we've done all the lead in. I'm declaring a listener. I'm packing some stuff up for our background job. I'm declaring how I reply. Here I'm replying with one last double check, both of the end block statements and the supported commands, and then running it and returning it chunked. We'll come back to that too. And that's kind of that. Then our actual server definition, we go take our variables, move them into the job, create some filters, one to handle errors, one to go get our data block, which is basically we're going to take whatever input string, we're going to try turning it into a command, one to replace variables so we can actually support our own sense of variables in the data block. And this one is basically going to current get our command input. So it's basically going to read whatever from body. And maybe it could be JSON. I could take data from that. Maybe it could be JSON RPC. I can take data from that. I can take data from web form. And I could also just take the command itself. If I don't have any other thing, I can just say, all right, your text is the command. So if I'm going to invoke REST method this thing, let's get our job, select expand RL, select last1, U, IRMU. Okay, there's the form we're getting by default. Mostly ignore that, but it is pretty simple. And we're going to go ahead and give it a body of 1 + 1 + 2 + 1. And we're going to go ahead and send that along. Oh, we need to do method post. Actually, let me correct this because I'm realizing that I literally just sent it the number 5 the way I wrote it because it did the math on the client side. There we go. Now it did the math on the server side. So I got a little web server running PowerShell and data blocks and whatever commands we say. And it's running them as carefully as we can. And that's what most of the code is doing, is making sure it looks right and no one is trying to sneak something that's not data language into it. So they don't have a choice here at this point about what session configuration they get other than declaring commands and an initialization script of their own. And that can't be changed by somebody in a web browser.
Hey,
Does
James.
this all make sense? Yes.
Yeah, I got a question about a statement you made versus client side versus server side. For someone who's not familiar, how did you know that first command was client side and the second one was server side? Because the output was exactly the same.
Well, that's just the proof that they both worked. But how I knew was experience in PowerShell. And this, by putting in parentheses, just works client side. But if I put this in quotes, well, that doesn't math anymore, does it? Right? So
Correct.
that was basically the equivalent of me saying this. Okay, I said 5, or I said hello. Oh, fine. I said single quotes, hello. This is remote PowerShell, basically.
Yeah.
In a background run space. Just again, only data language mode, only the commands we say. Okay.
Can you scroll up in your session there? Because I want to talk about something that you did. The other direction. Because you were doing the this versus that when you were doing, okay, so down a little bit, because you did the inside the parentheses, that's the sub expression.
Right.
So PowerShell will evaluate things inside the parentheses first. And I'm saying this not necessarily for this audience, but for anyone who stumbles across this later and goes, I don't get the difference. And then
just
the next
like
one,
most programming languages, most
right.
programming languages are nice enough to say, oh, hey, I'm going to do parentheses first as deep as I can go and work outward from there.
And so then next you did the 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, and it's actually using the math operator there at the command line.
Yeah,
right?
because in
So
PowerShell we can just spit out numbers. So PowerShell, without even thinking about it, is a calculator. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. You know, or if I want to change it, 1 times 2 times 3 times 4.
Exactly.
I get
5 times 6.
Yeah. So I think Steven is getting to the idea is when do you know that, hey, will it be evaluated locally or is it remoting? Is it evaluated on the other side?
Yeah, no, I was actually picking on the syntax a little bit because when the non-quoted 1, 2, 3, 4 with pluses is using the math operator in between them. Once you quote it, now it's a string, and so now that math operator is no longer a math operator.
Yes, and because PowerShell is extra nice, this will not necessarily fail the way you might expect it to. See what's going on here? Okay, now it's a string. So this all works. I just get all of them concatenated. But this also all works because it says, all right, this one was a number. Can I turn that into a number? Can I turn that into a number? Can I turn that into a number? So in fact, the only one of all of these that will not handle this client side, now that I'm like going through this example with you, is this. Just quoting the whole expression. This one would have handled it wrong, but we would have been able to tell that a little bit easier because we would have, go back to do it. If I did this, then I should get, R1121 versus 5.
I didn't mean to totally send us on a rabbit hole, but I find this to be interesting with people who are trying to get a hold of the language and how PowerShell works, and why this versus that. And your answer was correct. I know how PowerShell works. Yep, that's great. We got to explain it to those who don't, so that they get caught up with us.
I mean, fair. It's a good sidetrack and not, a bad thing to kind of discuss, especially considering not that I'm necessarily anywhere there, but the target market for this turtle stuff is, again, nieces. Like, this is there so that your kids or your family can play with PowerShell. And actually, I don't even know where my window went, so I'm just launching a new one. Because it's that easy to go throw up web servers now. I've got several of them running, and I don't need to bother, finding which tab it's in.
And I think you found your niche market.
That dad joke didn't quite land.
Hey, I'm not taking criticism from you. I'll take it from someone else.
Mark Twain says people ask for criticism, but they only want praise.
That's correct. I only want praise.
Mark Twain said that. I presume he doesn't say that. Just to be clear, if anybody maybe of a political leaning is listening and feels like they know things, Mark Twain has been dead for over a century. Just putting it out there.
Yeah, let's keep on going.
Indeed. Going back on to our fun little server thing, the next question had been, how are we defining these? And the answer is basically with as little as we can. And this is where I get to go show you other reptiles. So let's start with the simplest one, a calculating reptile, which is our calculator, but purely as a web form, because I told you it could handle web forms. So we've got a form that goes and posts back to its current URL and takes a command and go. Launch a web server, find the tab, 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, go. And looks like it has one of those, an example. There we go. There we are. Zoom in, zoom out. Okay. So there is our most basic reptile with all of the commands made explicit, essentially as an extra safeguard against stupidity. So this has no supported commands. It has no initialization script. It does as little as you can with it working interactively. Make sense?
Yeah. So it just
So
takes some code and run it and leave it in the console.
Yeah. So now here's where it gets actually fun for all of us practically. And I might actually pick on Dan in a bit. I'm going to go create a reptile that tells me days until. How do I do this? I write a little function that tells me the days until. We've all written a little function like this, right? All I'm doing differently is I'm spitting it out inside of an H1, which is a big header, okay? And I say my supported command is days until, and I'm going to go make a date selector. I'm actually going to point out, one other little thing here. We do have a parameter, so I can pass parameters to the commands that I support. And I don't technically have variables, but in case anybody is familiar with code injection or not, let's go to little Bobby tables. Okay. So, everybody familiar with this? This is the basics of a SQL injection attack. Did you really name your son Robert? Quote, parentheses, semicolon, drop table students. Little Bobby tables. So you can't little Bobby tables a data block because you couldn't run drop. Does this make sense?
Yep, keep on going.
So because you can't little Bobby tables a data block, you can't run any commands that I don't say you can run. Any attempts to use any variables will backfire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can actually make my own find and replace variable. And I can essentially say, well, before I run the data block, and I showed that briefly in the code, we're going to go look for a regex, and we're going to take this regex and replace it with any values from a hash table or from input. And this is the foundational basis of a web form. What do you have with a web form? You're getting a bunch of return values, and you're having to basically map them to a command and call it. Right? So we've got a safe web form. Stupid web form here, because all it's doing is telling us the days until whatever, but they don't have to be smart. If you just want to give a boss a clickable, hey, check the stats graph, this is great. So here we got days until, and it's going to tell me the days until, and I've got a date selector, and we're setting the variable. This is exactly how you write a normal average everyday form to date. Only thing we're doing differently is we're defaulting it to the current year whenever you build this. Okay. And we're going to say, here's a label, and we're going to say in the hidden thing, here's our command. And our command is basically go days until date. And we're going to say go. So do this. And again, I got to go back over to a browser and look, it defaulted to Christmas. And so it is 337.231766600451331 days until Christmas. And does everybody on this call, and hopefully anybody watching like later, get how simple this is as a web server? How easy it is to make a form this way.
Well, ultimately it's easy, but then you use Copilot to make it look all nice and pretty, right?
Yeah, sure. You can have
What was the,
anything
I'm
you'd
sorry.
like in your shell here. You could have no command supported, whatever you'd like. But yeah, you just write a little function and say you support that function and run your shell or write a little shell. You were starting to ask, or somebody was starting to ask?
Yeah, I said, where's the date picker?
I don't have to build one because that is a first class citizen inside of
Oh, right.
date
It's an
types.
input. Yeah. Okay.
It's just
Cool.
I've got an input type. I take that input type. It's going to only allow that.
All you have to do is swipe right.
I mean, I haven't built a Tinder on this, but yeah, you could very easily build a Tinder on that. Really wasn't even thinking that, but if we're really going there for a quarter of a second, that is pretty much 2 to 4 commands. You know, I got to swipe right and I swipe left, and one of them is basically saying take this person out of a random list, and the other one is saying add this person to a list. Right? And I guess you got to swipe up and a swipe down, which are ones go get the next random person, and one down is look at details of that person. So we got 4 commands we're exposing, one for each direction you're swiping.
I'd like the record to show that I have no idea how it works.
I don't have any idea how it works either, but considering how classically bad some of these things are, maybe somebody should run with this. Just I'm not thinking of doing that necessarily today. You know?
Yeah.
So taking another example, I had written a module pretty recently for CSS gradients because they're actually pretty cool. And so I have a gradient reptile, and it'll just let us pick a couple colors and make a few different gradient types. And then it again has our, command. In this case, I'm being a little overly whatever because the point that I had written this first, gradient wasn't always directly outputting HTML, and it still stringifies to CSS. So I don't know if it would be as nice. Anyway, so I'm going to go run that one. We're going to get a gradient reptile, and we're going to go do some PowerShell. And there we go, radial gradient. Linear gradient. We basically just got a CSS microservice. A self-service CSS microservice. Or self-service HTML microservice, or self-service JavaScript microservice, whatever you'd like. Any content type will do. I'm just not responsible for what you do with it. Giving another fun example, I made sure that it did chunked returns. And that means that I can stream back responses. And remember, we're running in a background run space of a background run space. So doing X number of hundreds of requests doesn't deny the next request. And thus, it's actually not so terrible to do something like a sleep. And so I made this example of a sleepy reptile. And it's very, visually unengaging example. We're just going to say when, 1, 2, 3. And each of these is going to wait a second and then say a message. So I'm actually going to make this say when. Hi. 3. And more. So where's that on the coolness meter?
So at that point, those were all independent of each other. They ran in order, but they didn't
They
necessarily.
ran in order. They returned 5 different messages, which streamed directly into the browser. No fuss, no muss.
They were all independent of each other, though.
No, this was one request for all 5. It ran the same command 5 times, each one of them running, outputting the message, and then sleeping, and then running and outputting the message. So when we do it again, we can actually count them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds.
I hear you.
That's
Each
cool, but
command was waiting a second to run.
That's cool, but it's setting off my type A alarm, something awful.
What do you mean?
The first one should be 1.
Oh, fine. Let's make it 1 then.
This is where you just have it. Oh, you didn't change it. I was going to say, hey, you got to change 4 to like 7.
No, actually, I'm going to be a little bit more cheeky in a second. And I didn't really realize that I could do this until just now, but it is probably about that simple if I had the right timings. But we're just going to go 1 singular sensation.
Oh, here we go. See,
You had to start it. Why did you have to start it?
James like acts like my jokes aren't funny to him, and then he does this, and he's like, "Yep, here we go."
So yeah, I
Ba-da-da-ba-da-da-ba.
didn't realize this, but I guess, yes, you could very easily build a karaoke server. Kind of
Oh, my.
accidentally just did.
Yeah, the timings.
I mean, my timing is a little off, but when is it not?
Eh,
That was Judd class levels.
you just have to watch it.
I mean, I didn't build a watch
Next.
reptile because I wanted only 1 command in the module, but I probably should eventually watch my reptiles before they bite me.
Yeah, and then put them up on TikTok.
Actually, that's kind of another thing you could do with this is a 24-hour content channel would be quite easy. Set up a browser source, set up your web server, stream video, call it a day. Are we all getting how overpowered this is? And also still, strangely enough, how safe it is? All of the power of PowerShell constrained to exactly what we say.
What was your next demo? You have, I think, 2 more.
Maybe. Just going and making some lucky shapes because they're more cool screen. And no, we're back to Turtle. Turtle and its shell, which is long enough that I didn't want to put it all in the same file. So Turtle is requiring a bunch of modules at start, importing those modules, saying, hey, I'm a bot, because there, at least in theory, would be the ability inside of Turtle to say, no, pop up a browser and show me this image. And I don't want that. You're already in the browser. So I built a thing in Turtle already that prevents that. I'm saying turn that behavior on, right? And I'm actually adding a few extra things because, you know, I would want them random colors and random angles. Random colors would be a nightmare to write with a little function like this. And also just for funsies, there's also the color wheel. In homage to certain other attendees, we've also got a very limited tips, which just declares a bunch of tips in Markdown. I need to declare more of them. And we say we're allowing all these commands, and here we go. So we're going to run another turtle reptile. And I'm going to get the stopwatch out again. And we're going to reset it. Last time was 21. I don't think I did a good job at actually making it like match the start. So go. And I can click faster than this. I can do it. I had to switch to my left hand. There we go. I'm getting to speed.
Don't get
Oh,
RSI during this
yeah.
demo.
That one was 19.76. So draw 100 pretty pictures in that time. And you know what else is great? By the way, just click save. Okay. Open that file. And this is
Saved all of
so
them.
seamless that I was like, why isn't this working? Oh, yeah. Because I'm in the static page.
Oh,
This is no longer got a server it can talk to.
yeah. So for all those randoms, can you see the turtle definition for them?
A lot of them, yeah. I did do this thing where I make the lucky add that to the title, or add the moves it made as the title. But, and also, I have made the general change in this version to make most of the commands in Turtle, the moves it can do, have some random variation. So in this case, not as much as I'd like get. I could see, okay, we did a rotate of 136, and I could see you did a Sierpinski square curve, and you did 2 random colors as a stroke, but I would have to open up the thing to figure out which random colors, and I don't know exactly how many expansions you did of the square curve. Like, looking at it, I'm going to say like 4, but you know, that's a with experience thing. Same things for this. This is an Archegon, which is a fun new one, by the way. Here we go. We'll do Turtle Archegon. So this basically draws a polygon with an arc outside. So let's do 4221. 242. 6 there. Yo, that's better. So now 42, 21, 6. And negative 21, 6. Negative 42, 21. Isn't this kind of fun that you can do this?
Well, it's fun to just like draw with, but I think some of the magic is just, hey, you could come up with some other stuff and put it in the code. So I liked, I would kind of talk a little bit about that other part. So,
Yeah.
but you can do it in a safe way. Hey, what you can just consume by the arguments, that kind of thing. So that's some of the magic there. But, the lesson of, hey, understanding a little bit of the data structure, understanding a little bit of flow control, both managing the environments. I really like the idea of just understanding the remote code and how the data is processed. And that was kind of like little nuggets for me as far as I'm concerned. But I think are there any other final comments that you want to make before we wrap up?
I mean, I do hope this is sort of a fun one. And, I think we can keep going a bit if you guys want. But it's really meant to be easy to understand and explorable and safe. It's going to get, much more varied and nice in terms of the variety of reptiles over time as I learn how to build easier and easier ones. One of the things that this does maybe a little bit less obviously give is the capability to have any number of different shells on a feature that you might want. So I can basically make a different version of Turtle for my nieces as they age that exposes different stuff in the shell without having everything underneath have to change, right? You can use this to do ad hoc exploration or execution of your own modules. One of the things that I found that's actually beautifully unexpected is that because it's creating this background run space to run stuff in all the time, it's actually faster for me to test a change to my module in here because I don't have to explicitly re-import it. So, you make a change to your function, you go save the function, then you go re-import the module, then you go do the reproduce the thing. If I was debugging this, I'd just have to click it again. Or if I wanted to see
But that
two
works
of these
because it
side
creates
by
a brand
side.
new background process each time, so that it happens each
Background
time.
thread, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. But ultimately, that's you kind of get some things for free, and you kind of if you understand the underlying working from there. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That really
So
opens up a much better dev loop for me than I expected. And beyond that, it's just fun. Like you basically have a tap into the browser that is incredibly simple. So we're just going to do our hello world H1 here. That worked. So if you're trying to like teach somebody really basic stuff about web development is actually easy. This makes it really, really easy to mess around with and understand. One other JavaScripty side of things to talk about, actually two. One security related one is that when you run stuff like this, when the server gives a response, even if you're filling in the HTML, it does not run the JavaScript. So this isn't exposing you to a JavaScript security hole, hopefully not either, right? It's as safe as we can make it, right? The other one I said we'd come back to, and that is commands. So the way that I'm writing the buttons is we just say, we have a button, we've got some JavaScript that's going to go detect these buttons and wire them up, but it basically just uses the command attribute and has the command right in there. What is the command attribute, you might ask? Let's go ask MDN. Oh, not AI. I wanted to ask MDN. That'll do. There is a relatively new part of web standards that is called the Popover API, and that is all about how things are targeted and run. So you'd have a command, which theirs traditionally start with double dashes, and a command for, which describes the target. Okay. And in their example, they've got this rotate the image left or right. But because we're using the same attribution, and because they have a built-in convention, all we would basically need to do here is say, does this start with two dashes? Cool, I'm handling it inside of the browser entirely. Does it not start with two dashes? Cool, I'm going to go call my server. And a web developer can just read the page and see what commands the Reptile is running. Make sense?
Yeah.
Seem web standard and useful?
Yeah.
Did we want to do an interactive show and tell and make a tips, PowerShell tips Reptile? Or is that an after party thing?
I
think it's an
that
after
might
party
be
thing.
an after party, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I so want
'cause-
to, thank you, James, for, I think some of your demos were perfect. I think, I like the fact that we started this off and we got kind of in the weeds and it gave the foundation of what's really happening. And I think that's some of the magic that, some people don't necessarily see straight off the boat. But it was good to understand where we started from and then how we got to the next stage. And it's not just, bells and whistles at that point. So I really want to
Yep.
thank you, James, for sharing with the group and asking for me. So this, you have I'm going to put back into chat the link. I think you posted it originally because it's already published. But this is in.
Yeah.
Where's your new GitHub?
We got PowerShell Web. GitHub.com/PowerShell Web is where I'm putting a lot of the PowerShell Web development stuff.
Okay.
And the two that you're looking at here are Turtle, which has been out since last summer. And I'll actually throw a few links in the chat to help you here.
Okay.
So we got the Turtle repository. The brand new one is Reptile. Yeah. So Turtle is a Reptile. And Beyond that, there's lots of other fun at PowerShell Web overall, but the site for Turtle is psturtle.com. I'm going to throw 2 links in from here. I'm going to call this the super demo page. Demo page. And we're also going to go ahead and, for funsies, in case you wanted to learn anything more, go to this mostly humorously accurate brief history of turtles, which explains basically how this all kind of came about. Again, it started with robotics in the 40s. It's got a very long history through all of computing. But going to the super demo page for a second, you imagine your turtle holding a pen. You can rotate, you can move forward, you can lift the pen. This has over 100 examples. We're not going to spend all the time here, but we start with just drawing a diagonal line, draw a triangle, draw polygons, squares, rectangles, right triangles. I did just start adding parallax examples here, so I'm creating like sun rays. Then we got parallax curves, and then we got parallax curve morphs, because you can just make any shape animate into any other shape, and I guess it didn't show any of that in the other fun demo, but it is very cool.
Yeah. Well, I think that's,
So-
that we're gonna leave that for the viewer to come back to and kind of understand some of those things. And then the page is gonna be there. So, and I like you
The
also
page is
put there.
there's so many examples to kind of work from. Most of them will just work in Reptile, and not knowing the ones that won't will also help you understand just exactly, where the bounds lie and, where things could improve. But honestly, they've all been really fun projects. They're all really great to learn and great to share, and hopefully a good way to kind of carry some of these torches of knowledge forward. I know it's kind of sometimes hard to help people understand all of the things PowerShell can do. Hopefully this makes that easier. And I know it's really hard to kind of impress upon the youngins how many things that they need to learn and what those things are in order to kind of understand development. And so I really hope this helps make the pool shallow again and provides a pathway for everybody to learn all this stuff.
Yeah.
And